Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. So as you all are all aware, we had started with the topic digestion and absorption of the nutrients across the GI tract. So in the last video we have covered the digestion and absorption of these nutrients in the mouth and the stomach. Okay, so we have seen that the digestion, the mechanical digestion and the chemical digestion takes place in the GI tract. Okay, so mechanical digestion is the crushing, due to the crushing action, maybe due to the teeth or maybe due to the contractions of certain smooth muscles, and further the digested nutrients can be absorbed across the membrane to enter into the systemic circulation. So we have seen what are the different ways by which the absorption of nutrients also which takes place. Okay, but we have seen that in case of mouth and stomach, negligible amount of absorption will take place, right? Most of the, even the digestion also, it's not complete. So most of the digestion, it occurs in the small intestine. So most of the absorption also takes place in the small intestine, because we have seen that there are several structural adaptations which are made available for the absorption processes to take place in large amounts. We have seen that there are circular folds, there are villi, there are microvilli which increase the surface area for absorption. Okay, so we'll start with the digestion, that is a mechanical and the chemical digestion in the small intestine. So to begin with the mechanical digestion in the small intestine. Okay, now this mechanical digestion in the small intestine, it will be because of two types of movements which are taking place in the small intestine. Okay. The first one is called as the segmentation and the second one is a type of peristalsis. Peristalsis, as we have seen, is due to the alternating contractions and relaxations of the smooth muscles in the muscularis layer. Okay, so the second type of movement, it's a type of peristalsis actually, and it is called as the migrating motility complexes, MMC it is abbreviated as. Okay, so these are the two types of movements which are responsible for the mechanical digestion. Now this segmentation, which is the first type of movement, these are usually localized, that is, it is generated at one particular place. Okay, and these are the contractions which are responsible for the mixing of the content, okay, of the chyme with the intestinal juices. Okay, so usually this segmentation, it occurs in the distended portion of the intestines, okay, because of the presence of large volume of chyme, where the intestines are distended because of the presence of large volume of chyme. Okay, so usually this type of movement will begin, segmentation. Okay, so usually the segmentation, they mix the chyme with the digestive juices and it brings the particles of food in contact with the mucosa for further absorption. Okay, so because these movements are localized at one particular place, they do not push the intestinal contents along the tract. Okay, so they will not be responsible for movement of the chyme forward. The chyme will remain over there, okay, but it will move in a specific manner which will help in mixing the chyme with the intestinal juices. Okay, now let us see how exactly this particular segmentation takes place. Now usually it starts with the contraction of circular muscles. Remember, the muscularis, it has two layers, the circularly placed muscles and the longitudinally placed muscles. So circular muscles will be placed along the circumference of your GI tract. It's a tube like structure, right? So it's a round structure. So circularly placed muscles, they will contract in certain regions of the small intestine. So as a result of which that particular area, in that particular area the intestine will get constricted and it will get divided into segments. Okay, so it will get divided into smaller segments. Next, the muscles in the middle of each segment again will contract. So it will further divide each segment into 2 segments further. And in the final step, the first contracted muscle, that is these, the ones which is contracted first, they will relax. So again it will reunite the certain parts of the segments. So what happens, because of this movement, the food is like, or the chyme is not actually pushed forward, but it just sloshes back and forth at that particular position. It will not move further along the small intestine. Okay, so usually this particular segmentation, it occurs more rapidly in the duodenum, okay, as compared to the other parts. Okay, so it progressively slows down as it reaches the ileum. So segmentation processes in the ileum, they take place at a very slower rate. Okay, now let us understand this particular process with the help of diagrammatic representation. So just imagine if this is your small intestine. Now here I have drawn it straight. Usually it is not straight in nature, it is highly coiled in nature, as you all are all aware of. So imagine if this is a small segment of your small intestine. Okay, so in the first step what will happen? In certain regions the circular muscles will contract. So because of this contraction of circular muscles in certain regions, it will result in constriction, right? So here the intestine, the small intestine has got constricted, right, because of the contraction of the circularly placed the smooth muscles. Okay, constrictions have taken place now at several regions, okay, at certain intervals. So what has happened? Your small intestine has now got divided into small segments. So the chyme which is present inside, it has got segmented. It has divided into segments, small segments, right? Now next step is contraction of these smooth muscles in between these earlierly occurred contractions. Okay, so here the contractions have taken place, right? So now the smooth muscles which is located in the middle of these contractions, those smooth muscles will also contract. So here this particular segment has been divided into further 2 more segments because of the contraction of the smooth muscles, circular smooth muscles over here. This segment again is divided into 2 more segments. This segment is also divided into 2 more segments, right? So it is further resulting in the segmentation because of additional contractions of certain additional circular muscles. Okay, now what is the final step? Relaxation of the smooth muscles which has contracted earlier. As you can see, these smooth muscles has contracted first, right? So now what has happened? What has happened? These smooth muscles which has contracted first, those have relaxed now. Here, over here also. So now what has happened to your chyme which was further segmented? Now what has happened? Portion which was present here and here, that has got mixed again, isn't it? Over here, the chyme which was present here and here, which was earlier segmented, it has got mixed now. Okay, now because of these alternating contractions and relaxations of smooth muscles, circular smooth muscles at specific intervals, the chyme will just make forward and backward movement because of the segmentations. So what will happen? The chyme, it will just slosh forward and backward. It will not be pushed further in the further parts of your small intestine. But what will happen? Due to these alternating contractions and relaxations of the smooth muscles at different areas, the chyme will just slosh backward and forward. Okay, so these are localized contractions which do not push the content forward. Okay, so this is to do with the segmentation. Now we have seen that segmentation usually occurs in those areas of the small intestine where distension has taken place due to presence of large content of chyme, right? Now, as most of the meals, it has been absorbed, most of the digestion, if it has taken place and absorbed, what will happen? The distension will lessen. The stretching of the walls of the small intestine will be decreased. So, as a result of this decreased distension of the small intestine, the segmentation process will stop and the peristalsis will begin. So, a type of peristalsis which is responsible for movement of the chyme in the forward direction is called as the migrating motility complex. MMC is the accepted short form over here. Okay. So, usually this type of peristalsis, slow peristalsis, it begins at the lower portion of your stomach, at the pyloric end, and it pushes the chyme in the forward direction. Okay. So, as the peristaltic movement it takes place along your small intestine, it pushes the chyme in forward direction. Whereas that was not the case with the segmentation. Segmentation, what happens in segmentation? Just the chyme sloshes forward and backward. But with this MMC, it pushes the chyme in the forward direction. Okay. So, usually these are slowly migrating peristaltic movement, okay, along the small intestine. So, it will begin in the lower portion of the stomach and it will continue as peristaltic movement right up to the end of the ileum. And the time required to complete this 1 MMC is 90 to 120 minutes. Okay, but along with it, it will push the chyme in the forward direction. Okay, so once the first MMC is over, second MMC will begin in the stomach and it will travel along the entire length of your small intestine, along the jejunum, duodenum, jejunum, and finally the ileum. Okay, so likewise the chyme will remain in the intestine for around about 3 to 5 hours. We have seen that in the stomach it stays only for hardly for 2 hours, but in the intestine it will remain for around about 3 to 5 hours. So, complete digestion and absorption of the food will take place over here. Okay, so this to do with the mechanical digestion. Then coming to the chemical digestion in the small intestine. So, just recall the digestion which take place in the mouth and the stomach, which we have covered already. In the mouth, the saliva, it secretes the certain digestive enzymes, right? Salivary amylase is secreted in the saliva. Okay, so this will convert the starch. It is a carbohydrate digesting enzyme. So, it will convert the starch, which is a polysaccharide, into a disaccharide, that is maltose, a trisaccharide, that is maltotriose, and alpha dextrins. Okay, alpha dextrins are short chain branched fragments of the starches, which mainly comprises of 5 to 10 glucose units. Okay, so this is the only digesting enzyme in the mouth. Usually there is one more enzyme which is secreted, that is lingual lipase by the lingual glands in the tongue, but the digestion does not start in the mouth because this enzyme gets activated only when it encounters the acidic pH of the stomach, is what we have seen, right? Okay, so in case of stomach, there is a protein digesting enzyme called as pepsin. It converts proteins to peptides, that is smaller fragments of protein. The lingual lipase, which is actually secreted in the saliva, but it gets activated in the stomach in the acidic pH. Even the gastric lipases, so these will convert the triglycerides into fatty acids, diglycerides, and monoglycerides, is what we have seen. Okay, now the nutrients, actually the absorbable form of the nutrients, these are the monosaccharides or the amino acids or the fatty acids which can be absorbed. So actually, if you can see that the digestive process is not completed. So the chyme which enters the small intestine it contains partially digested carbohydrates, proteins and lipids. So the digestion of all these three, it is not complete. Okay, so this digestion of these three is completed by the pancreatic juice, the various enzymes which are produced by the pancreatic juice, bile and the intestinal juice. So there are several enzymes which are present over here. We have seen carbohydrate digesting enzyme, protein digesting enzyme, lipid digesting enzyme. So these enzymes which are present in these three secretions, pancreatic juice, bile and the intestinal juice. So they will further help in the completion of digestion. There are several brush border enzymes also which are present in the brush border. Brush border is nothing but the microvilli. These are collectively referred to as brush border. So there are certain enzymes which are embedded in these brush borders also. So they will also help in completion of the digestion. Okay, so digestion of each component, that is carbohydrates, digestion of proteins, digestion of lipids and digestion of nucleic acids are discussed separately. Okay, so coming to the digestion of the carbohydrates. Okay, now as we have seen that already the salivary amylase have started its activity in the mouth itself. It will continue in the stomach also for a while until the acidic pH of the stomach will destroy this particular enzyme. Okay, so the time for which this particular enzyme remains active, it's a very short span of time. Okay, so by the time the salivary amylase is inactivated by the acidic pH of the stomach, only a very few starches are broken down. Okay, so by the time the chyme leaves the stomach, only a few starches are broken down. Okay, so this digestion of these starches will continue in the small intestine. So those starches which are not broken down, okay, usually starches are broken down into maltose, maltotriose and alpha dextrins by the salivary amylase. But all the starches are not digested, right? Because the time for which this enzyme remains active is very short. So this undigested starches will be further cleaved by the pancreatic amylase. So this is an carbohydrate digesting enzyme which is secreted in the pancreatic juice, which is secreted in the duodenum. Okay, so it will act on the starches and it will convert into maltose, maltotriose and alpha dextrins. Okay, so those starches which are not digested by salivary amylase, they are digested by the pancreatic amylase into same products, maltose, maltotriose and alpha dextrins. Now even these are not the final products. These are not monosaccharides. Okay, this is a disaccharide, that's a trisaccharides, and this also contains 5 to 10 glucose molecules, right? So further the digestion will be continued by the brush border enzymes. Okay, now before going into the further digestion by the brush border enzymes, let us see the components which cannot be digested. Now there are certain types of polysaccharides called as cellulose, which is present in the walls of the cell walls of the plant material, which cannot be digested by pancreatic amylase. Okay, so this is an indigestible plant fiber and this is referred to as roughage. Okay, now presence of this roughage is very important. If sufficient amount of roughage is not present in your diet, it will result in constipation. Okay, the passage of feces will become difficult, hard stools will be formed. Okay, so roughage, that is undigested cellulose, they add to the roughage and that's also important. Okay, now let us continue with the further digestion by the brush border enzyme. Okay, so now the amylase, the salivary amylase as well as pancreatic amylase, it has converted the starches into smaller fragments, right? Maltose, maltotriose and alpha dextrins. Now further the digestion is continued by brush border enzymes. So one particular brush border enzyme known as alpha dextrinase, it digests alpha dextrins. Alpha dextrins, it consists of 5 to 10 glucose units, right? So these are the small fragments of the starches. So this alpha dextrinase enzyme will clip off one glucose molecule at a time when it acts on the alpha dextrin. So it will start releasing the glucose molecules which can be absorbed into the systemic circulation. Okay. Further, there are 3 more brush border enzymes which can digest the dry saccharides into the monosaccharide as well as the trisaccharide also. Okay. So first enzyme, that is sucrase. Sucrase, obviously the name implies that it will act on sucrose, which is a disaccharide, which comprises of one molecule of glucose and one molecule of fructose. So it will cleave the bond in between them and it will release the glucose and the fructose. Another enzyme, lactase, it will act on the disaccharide lactose and it will convert it into glucose and galactose. One molecule of glucose and one molecule of galactose will be set free. And the third enzyme is the maltase. It will act on both maltose and maltotriose. So maltose, it comprises of 2 molecules of glucose. So maltase, it will split off the bond in between them and it will release the 2 glucose. Whereas the same enzyme will also split all the 3 glucose molecules of maltotriose also. Okay, so this is to do with the digestion of carbohydrates. Coming to the digestion of the proteins. Okay, so as we have seen earlier, under the digestion in the stomach, proteins are digested into peptides. They are converted into small fragments known as peptides. Peptides are nothing but short chains of amino acids which are joined by the peptide bonds. Okay, so pepsin is the protein digesting enzyme which is secreted by the chief cells in the stomach. Okay. Now further digestion of the proteins is continued by several enzymes, protein digesting enzymes which are secreted in the pancreatic juice. There are 4 enzymes we have seen: trypsin, chymotrypsin, carboxypeptidase and elastase. Of course, these are released in the inactive form: trypsinogen, chymotrypsinogen, procarboxypeptidase, proelastase, and once they reach the intestines, they are activated. First trypsin gets activated by enterokinase, and this in turn, trypsin in turn will activate the other enzymes. So these are the active forms of the enzymes which will continue to break down the proteins into peptides. Okay, so these particular enzymes, they will act at different types of peptides. Okay, so different types of peptide bonds between different types of amino acids. As you are all aware, there are 20 types of amino acids. So different peptide bonds are broken down by different enzymes. Okay, say trypsin, chymotrypsin and elastase. It can cleave the peptide bond in between specific type of amino acid. Carboxypeptidase, it splits off the amino acid from the carboxy terminal. There are 2 ends, right? Carboxy end and the amino terminal. Okay. Then apart from this, there are 2 brush border protein digesting enzymes also, that is aminopeptidases and dipeptidase. So as the name implies, aminopeptidase, it will cleave off the amino acid at the amino terminal of the peptide, and dipeptidase, it will split the dipeptides. Dipeptide means 2 amino acids which are joined by the peptide bond. So it will split the bond and it will release single amino acids. The 2 amino acids will be set free, which can be absorbed. Next is the digestion of the lipids. So mainly the dietary lipids. It comprises of the triglycerides. Okay, so the enzymes which are responsible for the breakdown of triglycerides are known as lipases. So we have seen earlier that there is lingual lipase, which is secreted in the mouth by the lingual glands, salivary glands. There is gastric lipase, which is secreted in the stomach. Now, these two enzymes can digest the triglycerides, but they have a very limited time period which is available. So, most of the lipids are not completely digested in the stomach. So, most of the digestion occurs in the small intestine through the action of the pancreatic lipase. So, this pancreatic lipase will split the triglycerides into fatty acids and monoglyceride. Triglyceride is nothing but a glycerol molecule will be there, to which 3 fatty acids will be attached. You must have studied about the fatty acids, the different types of fatty acids. Depending upon the number of carbon atoms, there are different types of fatty acids, right? So, there are 3 fatty acids which are attached to a glycerol. That's why it is known as triglyceride. So, it is acted upon by pancreatic lipase. It gets converted into monoglyceride, which has only 1 fatty acid on which, and 2 fatty acid molecules are set free. Now, these fatty acids can either be short chain fatty acids, which have less than the 10 to 12 carbon atoms, or they may be long chain fatty acids also. Okay. Now, coming to the digestion of the nucleic acids, that is the RNA and the DNA. There are 2 enzymes secreted by the pancreas in the pancreatic juice, that is ribonuclease and deoxyribonuclease. So, as the name implies, ribonuclease, it will digest the RNA, and deoxyribonucleases which will digest the DNA. So, nucleotides will be released. Now, further these nucleotides will be digested by the brush border enzymes. There are 2 brush border enzymes, nucleosidases and phosphatases. So, these will digest the nucleotides further into pentoses, phosphates and the nitrogenous base. These will be released, which will be further absorbed by the active transport. Okay, so this is to do with the digestion, the mechanical and the chemical digestion in the small intestine. Then coming to the absorption in the small intestine. Okay, now we have seen that all of these food materials, these are converted into smaller absorbable substances. Okay, so the chemical as well as the mechanical digestion right from the mouth to the small intestine. So these alter your food in such a way that they get converted into the forms which can be absorbed through the absorptive epithelial cells. Okay, so they should pass into the blood circulation. Then and only then it will be carried throughout the body and it will be utilized. Okay, so the main aim of digestion is to convert it into form which can be absorbed. Okay, now these include the monosaccharides which are produced from the carbohydrates, that is glucose, fructose and galactose. Then the single amino acids or dipeptides and tripeptides which are produced from the digestion of proteins. And the fatty acids, glycerol and the monosaccharides which are produced by digestion of the triglyceride. So these are the absorbable forms. So the passage of these digested nutrients from the gastrointestinal tract, where the actual digestion, the lumen of the GI tract where actual digestion has taken place, into the blood circulation or lymph, this particular passage is called as absorption. Okay, so ultimately it is getting absorbed into the systemic circulation. Now there are different processes involved in the absorption. Okay, so you all must have studied these when you all have studied the membrane transport. You all must have studied. That is the different processes by which a particular substance can cross the membrane. Diffusion, wherein the movement of substance takes place along the concentration gradient, that is from the area of high concentration to the area of a low concentration across a membrane. facilitated diffusion, wherein the movement takes place along the concentration gradient, but it needs the help of a transporter. So that's why it is called as a facilitated diffusion. Energy is not required over here, but a transporter is required because the substance cannot cross the membrane. Osmosis is one more process wherein the movement of the solvent takes place. The water actually is moving from the hypotonic region towards the hypertonic region across the membrane. And the active transport, which actually utilizes the transporter, and it requires the energy, and it moves the substance from the area of low concentration to the area of higher concentration against its concentration gradient. Okay, so these are the different processes by which the absorption of the nutrients may take place. Okay, now out of the entire absorption processes which are taking place throughout the GI tract, about 90% of the absorption it occurs in the small intestine, whereas the remaining 10% will occur in the stomach and the large intestine. Okay. Rest of the parts, that is the mouth or the pharynx, esophagus, negligible absorption will take place. Okay, because the food hardly remains for very few seconds in these particular regions. Okay, and any undigested, unabsorbed material, it will move into the large intestine. Okay, so let us see the different absorption processes. So as we have seen that the food materials are converted into absorbable forms. Okay, so we will cover all of these in details. Absorption of monosaccharides derived from the carbohydrates, absorption of the amino acid, dipeptides and tripeptides obtained from the proteins, absorption of the lipids, absorption of the electrolytes, absorption of the vitamins and absorption of the water. Okay, so we shall see all of these one by one. So coming to the absorption of the monosaccharides. So carbohydrates basically must get converted into monosaccharides before it is absorbed systemically. Okay, so absorption of this particular monosaccharides, it takes place in a very huge manner, that is round about 120 grams per hour is the estimated absorption of the monosaccharides. Okay, so almost all of these starches are getting converted into monosaccharides and they are absorbed. Okay, only the indigestible cellulose and fibers, these are not converted into the monosaccharides. So these are indigestible in nature. So it is removed out of the body in the form of solid waste, that is feces. Okay, now let us see the different processes which are involved in the absorption. So monosaccharides, they pass into the absorptive cells. These are the absorptive cells which are lining your mucosa, right? Mucosa of the small intestine. So these are the cells lining, the epithelial cells which are lining the villi. So remember the finger-like projections, villi which are lined by a single layer of epithelial cells called as absorptive cells. And on the apical membrane, so this is the lumen of the small intestine where actually the digestion process is taking place. So these are your nutrients which are broken down. So there will be several processes by which each of these type of substances will move across this apical membrane through this brush border, through the microvilli. They will enter into absorptive cells. From here they will move into the interstitium and then they will go into either the blood capillary or into the lymphatic vessels. Okay, so coming to the monosaccharides, they cross this apical membrane either by facilitated diffusion or active transport. Okay, now fructose, usually which is present in the fruits, it is transported across this membrane by the process of facilitated diffusion. So there are specialized transporters. It does not require any energy, but it will cross the membrane along its concentration gradient. However, glucose and galactose, it utilizes an active transport. It's a secondary active transport. You all must be aware of primary active transport, secondary active transport. So secondary active transport is the one in which the substance is crossing the membrane with the help of another substance. It is coupled with transportation of another substance. So here it is a sodium coupled transporter. Okay, so along with this glucose or galactose, the sodium ions will also cross the membrane. So it's a secondary active transport which is coupled with the transportation of sodium. So it's this particular transporter which is being utilized by these glucose and galactose. It has binding sites for one glucose molecule and two sodium ions. So unless and until one glucose and two sodium ions bind to that transporter, neither of these substances will cross the membrane. And galactose, it competes with glucose for the same site. So same transporter is utilized by both glucose as well as galactose. Now once inside the epithelial cell, from here the monosaccharides will cross the basolateral membrane. This is the basolateral membrane, okay, which is facing your interstitial fluid. So from here it will move into the interstitium by the process facilitated diffusion. Further it will go into the capillaries, the blood capillaries of the villi. Then coming to the absorption of the amino acids, dipeptides and tripeptides. Okay, so amino acids means a single unit, right, of which the proteins are made up of. Dipeptides, they comprise of two amino acids which are joined by a peptide bond. Tripeptides means there will be three amino acids joined by two peptide bonds. Okay, so all of these amino acids, dipeptides and tripeptides, these get absorbed by active transport. Okay, so as you can see over here, either active transport or the secondary active transport usually is utilized by the transportation. Okay, so most of the proteins, it comes from the diet, okay, but remaining the half of the proteins, it comes from actually the body parts itself, the proteins which are present in the body. So there are several structures which contains proteins, right? So these may get digested. The proteins may be derived from the dead cells also, which are sloughed off. Okay, now whatever protein is derived, okay, or whatever protein it is digested into amino acids, dipeptides and tripeptides, it is usually transported with the help of the active transport. Okay, now there are different types of transporters meant for carrying different types of amino acids. Now there are certain amino acids which are transported by utilizing sodium dependent secondary active transport. Okay, just like your glucose and galactose. Okay, apart from this, the dipeptides and tripeptides, they utilize the secondary active transport which is coupled with H plus ion. So instead of sodium, now here there will be binding sites for H plus. So unless and until all of these bind, the transporter will not be able to transport the dipeptides and tripeptides across the membrane. Now once inside the absorptive cell, once these dipeptides and tripeptides reach inside the cell, they will be further hydrolyzed to release the amino acid. So this peptide bond will be broken down and they will be getting converted into simple amino acids within the cell. And all these amino acids which are released, they will cross the membrane, the basolateral membrane, by the process of diffusion, and they will enter into the capillaries of the villus. So both of these monosaccharides and amino acids, they will be taken to the liver by hepatic portal system. There is a hepatic portal vein into which these nutrients will be absorbed and they will reach the liver where it is processed and utilized. Then coming to the absorption of the lipids. Okay, all the lipids are absorbed by simple diffusion. Now can you guess why it is so, why lipids are transported by the simple diffusion and why all the other needs certain transporters? That's because lipids, the membrane, the plasma membrane is also lipoidal in nature, right? So lipids will be easily able to cross the membrane. So that's the reason why here the simple diffusion process is utilized by all the types of lipids. So usually the triglycerides we have seen, they are broken down into monoglycerides and fatty acids. Now these fatty acids, this can be either short chain fatty acids or long chain fatty acids, depending upon the number of carbons, right? So the small short chain fatty acids which contain less than 10 to 12 carbon atoms, these are small in nature, these ones. So their size is very small. So because of their small size, they are usually more water soluble. Okay, it's lipid actually, but because of its very small size, it is water soluble. So they can easily dissolve in the watery intestinal chyme. It's watery in nature, right? Most of the secretions, they contain water. So the chyme will be watery in nature. So these small short chain fatty acids can easily dissolve and pass into the absorptive cells by simple diffusion. So in the same way, just like your other nutrients, these will also be taken into the capillaries and they will go into the liver through hepatic portal vein. However, the large short chain fatty acids and the long chain fatty acids, these are the ones which contain more than 10 to 12 carbon atoms. Okay. The large short chain and the long chain fatty acids, these are quite large in size, right? Even the monoglycerides, they are also quite large in size and they are hydrophobic in nature. So these are not water soluble. So as a result of which they have difficulty in remaining suspended in the watery environment of the chyme. So now here bile acids or the bile salts which are secreted by the liver into the bile, this will help in the further absorption of this lipids. Okay, remember the bile salts, these are the salts of the bile acids, chenodeoxycholic acid and cholic acid, the salts of the bile acids. So these are amphiphilic in nature. Okay, so they will have a detergent like action. Okay, so it will coat this particular large fatty acids or monoglycerides and they will result in formation of something called as a micelle or small morsels, which are of nearly 2 to 10 nanometer in diameter. Okay, so these bile salts, they will orient themselves around these monoglycerides or large short chain or long chain fatty acids in such a way that these fatty acids or monoglycerides will be able to suspend in the water. They will help in dissolution of these lipids into this watery material. They will remain stable. Now how these micelles are formed? By orientation of these bile salts. Remember, these are amphiphilic in nature. So they have hydrophobic region and hydrophilic region. So these bile salts will orient themselves in such a way that the hydrophobic regions will interact with this fatty acid chain or the monoglycerides. And the hydrophilic region, it will interact with the watery chyme. So they will arrange themselves around this the large short chain and long chain fatty acids or monoglycerides in such a way that they will form a stable coating. It consists of round about 20 to 50 bile salts which are arranged in such a way that it makes it possible for this lipid to remain stable. So once these micelles are formed, they will move towards the apical membrane, and once it reaches the apical membrane, these fatty acids and monoglycerides are released from the micelles and they will immediately get absorbed by the simple diffusion. Okay, so once inside the absorptive cells, now these fatty acid chains long chain fatty acid and large short chain fatty acid, monoglycerides, all of them are now inside the absorptive cell. Now once inside the absorptive cells, they will reconvert into triglyceride. They will bind together. Triglyceride means what? Glycerol, which will be attached with 3 fatty acids. So it gets converted into triglycerides once again. Now actually these triglycerides are broken down into fatty acids and monoglycerides, right? But here they are getting reunited to get converted into triglycerides. Okay, now these triglycerides which are formed, okay, due to the recombination of the fatty acids with the monoglycerides, okay, so this gets aggregated into globules along with the phospholipids and cholesterol, and further it becomes coated with the proteins and it gets converted into large spherical masses called as chylomicrons, which are nearly about 80 nanometers in diameter. Now these chylomicrons, they cannot cross the membrane by diffusion. Rest of all the substances have crossed the basolateral membrane by the process of diffusion, right? Facilitated or the simple diffusion. But these cannot utilize the diffusion. Why? Because the size is very large, right? So they utilize the exocytosis for them to move out of the absorptive cells. Okay, so by the process of exocytosis, they will move out of the absorptive cell. Now, the size of this particular chylomicrons is very large, right? So because of their large size, they cannot enter the blood capillaries. So this is a villi. So there are absorptive cells over here which are lining over here, from where the absorption will take place. So most of the substances get absorbed into the blood capillaries, right? Your monosaccharides, then the amino acids, okay, then the small short chain fatty acids also get absorbed into the blood capillaries. But that is not the case with chylomicrons because the size is very large. Now where they have got absorbed, remember the structure, that is lacteal. Lacteal is nothing but the branch of the lymphatic vessel, right? So chylomicrons will be absorbed into the lymphatic vessels, that is the lacteals, which has much larger pores than the blood capillaries. Okay, so once inside these lacteals, they will travel in the lymph. So lymph will carry it through the lymphatic vessels. It will enter into the thoracic duct, which you all must have studied in the lymphatic system. The thoracic duct will carry it into the left subclavian vein. So ultimately now the lipids have entered into the blood circulation. Though they are not directly absorbed into blood circulation, but lymph will carry it into the blood circulation. Then coming to the absorption of the electrolytes. Now electrolytes are ionic in nature, right? Sodium ions, potassium ions, then the bicarbonate, chloride, iodide, iron, potassium. So most of these electrolytes, they get absorbed by the active transport. Okay, because most of them are charged in nature, right? So sodium ions, there is a charge on them. And any charged substance cannot cross the membrane. Because membrane already has a charge, it will get repelled. Any unionized molecule can cross the membrane, but a ionized substance can never cross the membrane. Okay, so sodium ions, these are actively transported, okay, by the help of sodium potassium pump across the basolateral membrane, whereas the actual absorption takes place via secondary active transport. Okay. Then apart from this, the negatively charged bicarbonate, chloride, iodide and nitrate, these enter either passively along with the sodium or it will get transported by active transport. Calcium also gets absorbed actively under the influence of this hormone calcitriol. Even other electrolytes like iron, potassium, magnesium, phosphate, these are also absorbed via active transport. Then coming to the absorption of the vitamins, the fat soluble vitamins like A, D, E and K, these are getting absorbed by simple diffusion. The water soluble vitamins like most of the vitamin B or vitamin C, it is also getting absorbed by simple diffusion. However, vitamin B12, it combines with the intrinsic factor which is secreted in the stomach. Okay, so unless and until it gets combined with the intrinsic factor, it will not get absorbed. So this combination is absorbed via active transport mechanism. And coming to the absorption of the water. Now the total volume of water which enters into the small intestine each day, it's around about 9.3 liters. Okay, out of which the 2.3 liters come from the ingested liquid which you consume, and 7 liters it comes from the gastrointestinal secretions. And out of this, the small intestine absorbs nearly 8.3 liters of the fluid. And remaining 1 liter, only 1 liter will be passed into the large intestine. Now most of this 1 liter is also absorbed by the large intestine. Around about 0.9 liters of the water is absorbed in the large intestine. So only 0.1 liter, that is just 100 ml of water, is excreted in the feces. Now this amount is also very important. If you consume very little amount of water, it will result in formation of hard stools. The feces will become hard and it will result in constipation. Whereas too much excess of water is also not good. Watery diarrhea may be precipitated. Of course, the reasons for that are quite different. Maybe due to some infections, the diarrhea may take place, whereas excessive passage of water will take place into the feces. Okay, but there is a regulated amount in which the water is lost from the body. Most of the water is reabsorbed. Depending upon the requirement of the body, the absorption of water will take place. So most of the water which is secreted, it will get reabsorbed by the gastrointestinal tract, and very little of water is excreted out of the body. Okay, now the process by which the water is absorbed, it is osmosis. So osmosis is a process by which the water crosses the solvent crosses the membrane to reach into the interstitial fluid, and from here it will enter into the blood capillaries. Okay, now water absorption and secretion, both processes are taking place in the small intestine. Okay, so water is moving in both the directions. So usually it is controlled by the amount of electrolytes and nutrients which maintain the osmotic balance with the blood, and accordingly the amount of water is getting absorbed. Okay, so this will prevent in the excessive loss of water from the body. Okay, so absorption of these electrolytes, the monosaccharides and amino acids, they will help in maintaining a concentration gradient for the absorption of the water by the process of osmosis. Okay, so this is to do with the absorption process. So we have seen the digestion, that is mechanical as well as chemical digestion in the small intestine, and the absorption of several nutrients from the small intestine. So this is a reference. Thank you for watching.